That's terrible.
All righty.
Okay, are we ready to begin?
I think we're ready to go.
Well, Commissioners, we have quite the packed schedule this afternoon, so please bear with us. At your desks, just so you're aware, you do have a packet of information that I've put there. It looks like an Excel spreadsheet. This is something that goes with the Regional Forensic Science Center revenue package that you'll hear about today. So just please be aware that that's what that attachment is, and I had intended to include that in your original book. And so with that, though, we will start with the Division of Public Safety. Marv Duncan is here, and we will begin on page 170 of your binders, which is just behind the Public Safety tab. And with that, I'll turn it over to Marv.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Marv Duncan, Public Safety Division Director. With me here today, I have Dr. Rohrig over in the corner. Say hi. Forensic Science. Dan Hughes, our new Emergency Manager. Next to him, Kim Pennington, 911. Chief Dagny, Fire Department. Scott Hadley, EMS. Mario is here with Corrections. Lawanda Fishazer is here with the Fire Department. And then at the table we have Mark Masterson and Chris Morales. Welcome, everybody. So here's what we're going to talk about today. The Director's Office, which has EMSS in that office budget. Emergency Communications and Management. This is a new label, but we're going to talk about that some more. Emergency Medical Service, the Fire District, Regional Forensic Science, and Corrections. As you can tell from the first slide, the division is involved in a lot of emergency things and also corrections and forensic science. The EMSS mission is the Emergency Medical Service System. There are two people in there. Dr. Braithwaite currently is our OMD, and one other person. That position is vacant right now. They oversee the whole emergency medical service system in the county, which is the fire departments, 911, and EMS. Here are some of their programs: clinical practice, education, quality assurance. They maintain and evaluate the compliance to protocols using an integrated approach. They create and monitor quality indicators, oversee development of clinical education, and make sure everything is consistent in the educational materials we use. The value they bring is they give us an integrated pre-hospital approach to medical care. Some of the changes and challenges have been recently keeping the positions filled, but thanks to your support, we do have a medical doctor that's approved and hired and will be here the 1st of August. His family will be moving here the end of June. And we're currently looking for an education manager that was vacated earlier this spring. They too are affected by the increased demand and emergency requests by our citizens, and you'll hear that same theme over several departments today. Staff reductions in the past did cause some difficulty in meeting those increased service demands, but they're continually looking for more efficient ways to do the emergency medical service, and currently we're looking at restructuring dispatch priorities, nurse triage, and community paramedics, and we'll talk some more in a little bit about that. Their budget fully funds the medical director and the education manager. We do have a decision package for a clinical person. If that's implemented, that would give them a nice round of folks to do the business, day-to-day business. And then they would share the quality assurance among the three staff, the doc and the two others. Here's the decision package we talked about earlier. The clinical manager functions include credentialing, protocol revision, and system-wide communications. And they would help out with the QA duties that were originally done by the QA position that was deleted a couple of years ago. And the request is for $530,000, and that's 1 FTE. Next is emergency communications and management. And as some of you may recall, earlier this spring, we took folks from health emergency, and we took emergency management and combined them, and then we placed them under emergency communications, and then renamed that department Emergency Communications and Management. And Kim Pennington is the director of that department. They give us the vital link. They give citizens a vital link, the 911 area, to the emergency services that they're looking for. And in addition to their mission statement this year is to prepare, respond, recover, and mitigate, and that's the emergency management piece that was formed with the 911 folks. Here's a look at their basic programs: administration, emergency call taking, the Emergency Telephone Act, and then emergency management is the emergency preparation, response, recovery, and mitigation. Administration basically does the oversight of the department, and under administration they also have a training section that trained over 208 people involved in call taking and dispatching last year. They also have a QA section that's very aggressive at looking at how the 911 operators work, and they reviewed over 11,598 cases last year to make sure we're doing the right thing at the right time. The next program is the emergency call takers. They start the whole process of alerting first responders. Then that call is passed off to the emergency dispatching. Last year, they dispatched over 844,000 calls. It's a busy shop. They also dispatch for 33 public service agencies here in Sedgwick County. The telephone service, the 911 Act, that's non-tax funds that we get to basically maintain our equipment and buy new equipment. And then emergency management is the final program there. They do a great job at keeping the EOC ready at all times, monitoring our everyday situations. They do emergency planning and drills. They activate the EOC when we need it, and they maintain 147 outdoor warning devices. In changes and challenges for that department, their call volume is up 30% since 2010. We don't like calls to go into a queue. We try to manage that the best way we can. Technological advances in the field of emergency communications, as including statewide call handling solutions. The volunteer hours are down in the emergency management area. As you know, over the past few years, we quit funding a lot of that. And then the change that we've already talked about was the restructuring of the department this year. Property tax funds will take care of all of our people in 911. Emergency management and training, siren maintenance, and the EOC takes care of the commodities, and it takes care of the maintenance and upkeep on the outdoor warning devices. The non-tax funds is the Telephone Act that we talked about, 911 Act, which helps maintenance costs for the radios and the CAD and recording systems. The hazard planning position in emergency management is a grant, and in public health emergency preparedness, those folks are also a grant. Emergency communications is looking for 3 additional FTEs as call takers. As we said earlier, the call volume is up 30% since 2010. And during this time, they also took on dispatching for 5 additional agencies here in the county. Here's a simple slide showing how the calls have gone up. We're over 1 million calls per year. And here's some cost, overtime cost. The thought is the 3 call takers would help bring down some of that overtime cost as well. EMS, they take good care of us, getting us to the hospital. They have 2 basic programs, administration and operations. Under administration, obviously they have the oversight and fiscal management of the department. They manage their accounts receivable. They do a lot of training and education for their employees. Logistics is very important. That's where they keep the ambulances fully stocked, up and running.
Marvin,
Yes, sir.
sorry to interrupt. Can you go back a slide?
Mm-hmm.
These call takers, will it eliminate overtime?
It will eliminate some of it, yes.
How much?
Kim, any guess?
We currently have budget authority for 11, and because of call volume increase, I have minimum staffing, so that would give me 1 additional person on each shift. So I would say it would take it down by 3/4, maybe a half to 3/4. It can take, a call taker can take 35% of a call volume.
A half?
110 to 165,000.
But it's going to cost us 158,000.
The other part of overtime is not, and I know this is budget hearing, it's about the dollars, but it's also about wearing my people out. You can only be tethered to a console and have a 3-foot radius for so many 20-hour shifts a week without it burning you out.
That's a separate issue. I mean, just a statement. That statement wasn't made. That's a different issue. But we can't just. I mean, I don't want to give the false impression that this would pay for itself, based on the numbers. Is what I'm getting at. So.
Right.
Okay. Thanks.
Again, EMS, we were in the logistics area. That's a very important area, and that's where they keep up the ambulances and medical supplies, keep everything stocked and running, keep the stations going. They also do QA and medical protocol compliance. In the operations area, we have 15 stations that are located throughout the county, and thanks to the addition last year, we had 19 peak time ambulances. They do operate special operations to help out with special events. They can do mobile items such as a bike medic team. They also have a disaster medical support unit that can deploy. They provide the emergent, non-emergent, advanced life support treatment and transportation for those who are acutely ill. And they're available to anyone in the county, anybody that's visiting the county, they will respond. Last year they had over 60,000 service requests, and they transported over 40,000 of those. In the past, they've had staff that's been deleted, so that's been changes and challenges for them. In the operational personnel and performance area, they do have an increase of emergent and non-emergent demand, and we'll talk about that with a couple of slides here in a little bit. The performance, especially in the suburban and rural areas, as they become busier at the inner core, the response times get a little longer out in the urban areas. There's a decrease in the performance reliability for high acuity patients, and I have a slide. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then obviously the cost of medicines and medical supplies is going up all the time. This just shows you the history of the call volume. You can see in 2014 over 60,000, which was I think it was about a 4% increase over the previous year. And then these are the folks that actually get transported. They're 40,775. I think that was over 3% from the previous year. Here's the changes in the heart attack and stroke alert compliance. Our target is try to get 90% of these folks to the emergency room in less than 45 minutes. And because of the service and call demand, we are losing ground there gradually. Property tax funds will cover the operation as long as we don't see any big jumps in spikes in commodities or fuel. We have a decision package on commodities budget, much like what we asked for last year, for $32,000 to help with the increased cost. Does not involve any FTEs. One of the things our emergency, our EMSCC council team that met over the year, first thing we would like to do is change the way we dispatch our ambulances, and we came earlier this year and talked to you about that, how we would look at the priority of dispatches, who would go, when would they go. The second area that the council looked at was the emergency or the community nurse health line. And the thought here is if we can have nurses in 911, then they could take care of those low acuity patients that call in, the ones that may just need a Band-Aid or some minor care, or we can steer them to the right clinic the next day, get an appointment. They can get an opinion on, is my fever out of control, those kind of issues. The thought was to stop the call right there in 911, doesn't leave the room. That way you don't get EMS and fire and law enforcement running to these low acuity calls that aren't going to result in a transport anyway. To do that, we'd like to start with 3 additional FTEs, and that cost would be estimated to be over $200,000. One of the side notes on this, if we do have community nurses in the 911 area, and they do solve some of those low acuity calls, that would take work away from Kim's 911 dispatchers. Because now the call taker gets the call, passes it off to dispatcher, we dispatch EMS and fire, and 30% of the time, no transport happens. So it's something to think about. It's something we'd like to do, and we think it's worthy of taking a look at. Then the third part of the EMSSCC recommendations that we looked at was a community paramedicine program, and this would take the place of an EMS crew. This would be one person in not an ambulance, but a smaller vehicle, and a black bag and some test equipment, and they could also be dispatched to those low acuity patients, those low acuity calls, and that would eliminate sending a crew of 2 and an ambulance to those calls. We'd like to go with 2 additional FTEs for that at a cost of $264,956.
Marv, why can't we just repurpose 2 existing positions or 1 position?
Well, the thought is we're going up 4% every year. If we can put these 2 in there now and the nurses in there now, maybe we stabilize it so we don't have to add any more ambulance crews than what we have now, because they're still dealing with the regular 60,000 calls. These folks could be dealing with that other increase that we're going to see over the years anyway. But if you take crews away from Scott now to fill these kind of positions, then you're probably going to run short in the field of ambulances during peak periods. We're recommending an increase in the revenue package, and we did get an increase last year. We're asking for another increase this year, and this increase could help pay for those nurse triage people and community paramedics. This was taken out of the Journal of Medical Service magazine in February. Even with our increase, we're still going to be below what the national averages are. Here it was $684 for a basic emergency call. And some of the ALS emergency calls are averaging between $928 to $1,052. And then down on the right side, you can see what we currently charge. And then the chart underneath the 684 is the other charges that are nationwide. So the next department is the Sedgwick County Fire Department, and everyone knows what our fire department folks do for us. They help us with our emergencies, our fires, our medical emergencies, potential disasters. They basically have two programs, administration and operations, much like EMS. Administration does the command and control for the district services and programs. Fleet maintenance, their mechanics are under their administration, and they take care of 54 pieces of specialized equipment for the fire department, but they're housed down in fleet maintenance. They also have prevention, which do the building fire codes. They do safety evaluations and educations, and they do investigations when necessary. They also do training for our industry, our schools, our businesses, and they train their own workforce. Operations-wise, they have 9 stations across the fire district that provide suppression and medical response. And we are involved, and we do provide and receive automatic aid from various agencies. They also maintain a technical rescue team for the district and 19 other counties. And they provide regional hazmat response for the district and the other 19 counties. I put a sample of the calls they have down there from 2014. Our biggest challenge, as you all are aware, is that our expenditures are exceeding our revenues. And we've been dealing with that for a few years, and we have a few years left to deal with it. 8 positions have been frozen. 6 of those 8 positions are firefighters, and those 6 positions save us about $400,000 annually in the budget. The frozen firefighter positions also change the way we do deployments at Station 31 and 39. We did put in for the SAFER grant this year, and if approved, it would restore 6 of those firefighter positions. But we won't know the results until sometime this summer, June through September. Forensic Science Center. They provide the highest quality of medical, legal, and forensic science services for citizens of Sedgwick County. And these are their programs: administration, forensic laboratory, and pathology. The services are analysis of evidence submitted by law enforcement, and post-mortem exams. They offer expert testimony when called upon, and they're available to any agency investigating criminal activity here in the county. Administration obviously provides the technical and operational oversight for the labs. They do CORA and discovery order compliance, which is becoming more and more all the time. They procure the items that they need for the lab. They do fiscal management, and they're the point of contact for the public and other departments in criminal justice, in the criminal justice system. Forensics Laboratory Division, very critical component of the criminal justice system. And last year they had 3,458 illicit drug cases that they looked at, 74 CODIS hits, which that's a big deal. When you get a CODIS hit, it's like getting a home run. The lab celebrates whenever they get a hit, and you recently got 4 hits in 1 week. So way to go, team. They also received 1,895 subpoenas to provide expert testimony, and obviously when they're in court doing testimony, they can't be in the lab taking care of the backlog. Services for over 40 law enforcement agencies, fire departments at all levels, and they analyzed the evidence associated with criminal activity, over 50,000 forensic tests last year. The pathology division, they triaged over 3,000 death calls last year, which is up over the prior year, 4% or more. 397 death scene investigations, and they're on call 24/7. Post-mortem examinations have risen, 887 cases evaluated. We think there'll be 900 or more this year. And they do those to determine the cause and the manner of death, and oftentimes for homicides and motor vehicle accidents. And then they provide some closure to the family. Some of the changes and challenges is keeping good qualified staff, keeping them trained. Folks come looking for Dr. Roard's lab folks all the time. Increasing commodity utilization, training costs are up. Increased demand for service, especially for emerging drugs, the synthetic cannabinoids and lysergic acid delpholamide. Substantial increase in pathology and toxicology caseloads are driving the cost of the business up for them. Decreased grant funding during this time. We used to use grant funding to help replace a lot of our older equipment and maintain our older equipment. Increased cost of daily operations. Again, cost of commodities growing up. Increased in required testing, leading to increased amounts of cost of reagents and chemicals, and increased cost of contractuals as well. But they can get the job done with the property tax funds that are provided. As far as quality of service, however, as the backlogs build, it's the timeliness of service. You know, law enforcement and the judiciary system would like to have all the information now, but obviously we don't have the folks that in the space and the lab equipment to do everything right now, so we do carry a backlog. In pathology, still the budget will take care of their needs, but again, it's the timeliness of the service. With that many post-mortems coming in, there is a backlog. Decision package, we'll talk a little bit about increased costs of indigent burials. They've gone up from 1,763 to 3,115, and the number of indigents is projected to remain at or exceed the 2014 levels last year. So to deal with that, we would request an extra $30,000 for the burials. However, it's always been a common practice to do the burials. We could consider cremation. If we do cremation, then we could probably live within the budget we have and not have a increase or a decision package. Increased number of pathology cases, that increasing trend from 2013 to 2014, 7-8%. Those additional cases require additional toxicology testing. Gone are the days when you had a questionable death and maybe that person took one drug. Well, now people take a lot of medicines, and the lab has to look for all those quantities of medicines that may be in your system. So they're requesting an extra $17,000 to help deal with that increased cost of testing. The morgue attendant, we've talked about this in the past. with the business on the rise, the increased number of postmortems, this would help the staff that's trying to do those postmortems get to work and do the postmortems rather than have to shut down for a short time and have an attendant or somebody from the team go and dispense of the bodies. So we're asking for a part-timer. We'd advertise that we'd be open for a certain amount of hours, and that's when the funeral homes could come and do business. Again, very small cost, but it would pay off, I think, in a big way, so we can keep our folks in the lab. A revenue package is being proposed by the Forensic Science for out-of-county forensic pathology services. Because our costs are going up, we're essentially going to pass those costs off to the out-of-county folks. And that request, we think that revenue would raise about $44,763. Department of Corrections, again, they offer a continuum of community-based correctional services which promote public safety. There are a lot of programs we're going to go through. I'll go through them rather quickly. If you want me to slow down and stop, talk about them, let me know. But their basic programs are adult services, juvenile services, and juvenile facilities. We have the drug court. 5-year ADP is 98 folks, and the clients served in calendar year 14 was 192. Day reporting, which is a non-residential sentencing alternative, but it's primarily for municipal courts, and those clients average 310. Pretrial services, they basically divert inmates from the adult detention facility to their own homes under supervision. That 5-year ADP is 249, and the calendar year over 1,400. Adult intensive supervision program protects the community by closely supervising felony offenders. The 5-year ADP there is 1,475 clients, and then clients served in 14 was 2,719. The Adult Residential Center promotes public safety through close supervision of felony offenders in a residential setting, and that 5-year ADP is 84, and the fiscal year was 300. The DOC administration obviously oversees all this, provides centralized administrative services to the whole department. DOC training, they have a very aggressive training program in corrections, and it provides professional development of the staff so they can deliver the effective and high quality public service. Juvenile services, the incentive grant match is there to be used as leverage for local and state resources. JIAC is the 5-year average of intakes is 3,479. Clients served in 14 was 2,869. Juvenile services contracts. This provides an annual block grant to provide prevention and early intervention services. Juvenile field services is they serves offenders on probation and at risk of entering state custody or juvenile corrections facility. Continue their JISP equals 163, and their case management was 315 for the 5-year ADP. Then in 14, JISP had 318 and JCM had 503. The juvenile detention facility, which you're probably most familiar with, the ADP there is 61, and for 14, 1,135 folks were in there. The juvenile residential facility is a residential staff secure facility that provides a less costly alternative to secure detention. Their 5-year ADP is 19. In the calendar year, they did 302 clients. Finally, SKIP, Sedgwick County Youth Program. Their 5-year ADP is 13. Clients served in 14 is 98. Changes and challenges for corrections. The increased demand for drug court and pretrial services is nearing capacity, which is a good thing, but we may need some help. The increased demand for juvenile detention and reduction in the use of the alternatives. Maintaining necessary staffing to supervise higher risk clients while we're dealing with reductions in state block grant funding. And then finally, the restructured juvenile intake and assessment center to utilize more part-time staff as a response to decreased state funding. Department of Corrections, property tax funds for adult services. This is what we estimate that this will help us serve in the new budget. Again, for juvenile services, this will help us serve these clients in 2016. Non-tax funds provide jail alternatives, community corrections, supervision, intervention services, and the residential facility. There's some numbers for those. Juvenile services. And a decision package. We talked about this earlier in the year. This is the Vera Institute of Justice that would come in and train Mark's folks on working with families, so of youth that are in trouble. Keep them close to home. And you're requesting $145,000 for that over the next, take about 18 months. No FTEs. A revenue package. Corrections is proposing that we up the fees that we charge client supervision to $500 the first year and $300 the second year. Current fee structure requires clients to pay a total of $200 over the first 24 months. The increased fees allow Mark to maintain 3 intensive supervision officer positions that have been intentionally held vacant due to uncertainty in the state budget, and that would be hope to raise $180,000 in that revenue package. So here's the division summary for the 2016 budget. Over $70 million. Here are the decision package requests with a total of $911,000. Here's a total revenue package request for $648,311. And that concludes my briefing, and we'll stand for questions.
Commissioner Peter John?
Marv, let me begin with your last couple of slides. Is it safe then to, if you received all the decision package requests and you also received all the revenue packages requests, we're talking about a net difference of about 260, a little over 260 some thousand. The difference in between 911 and 648 on the last two slides between this.
Well, in the revenue package, it includes three FTEs, right, Mark, for corrections?
The positions that we're holding vacant until we know how the budget turns out.
So I'm just trying to understand if it's safe to subtract the revenue from the decision package expenditures and showing a net difference of a little over $250,000 that you did that would have to be found.
Well, I'm thinking
is that a safe statement?
The corrections one is about a wash and there's not a decision package there because we already have the FTEs. They're just vacant. We need to fund
Okay.
them.
So
So
then-
I would take away the 180, add the 423 and the 44,000, and maybe subtract that, and you get a better.
So it's 911 and subtract like 468. So you're looking at a little over 440,000.
Mhm.
Let me go through.
And then on some of those, like in Dr. Rohrig's area, if we did consider cremations, there's another 30,000 that could go away. Because we have enough budget if we did all cremations, no indigent burial, then we would eliminate that decision package.
Well, that was one of the questions I had on that. If we went to cremations, if we'd moved back to a 2013 level of indigent burial expenses, or 2014 with the increased cost in the new contract.
Tim?
Yes, we'll be able to cover the estimated 15 census if we did 100% cremation. Right now, we do about 50-50, half we bury, half we cremate. But given the significant increase in cost for burials, that's why we needed the $30,000 this year, and we're asking for another $30,000 in the 2015 budget. If we went to 100% cremation, that $30,000 request would go away, and we can live within our means with that change in practice.
On that item. Help me out so I understand, how did we end up with 50-50?
That's just the way it works out. I mean, some years it's 60-40, some years we vary a little bit more, some years we cremate a little bit more. It's all driven by our standard practice, and that is, if we have an indigent, which Sedgwick County is responsible for, our medical investigators will do a diligent search to identify next of kin. If we cannot find any next of kin, cannot find anybody to claim the body, then we bury that deceased. There are some cases where we are able to identify next of kin. If they refuse, I have had any contact with Uncle Bob for many, many years. I'm not going to take responsibility. We tell them, we understand that if we do that, we are going to cremate. We let them know in advance that's what's going to happen. And if they still refuse to accept, it's our responsibility that we cremate those individuals. So it varies a little bit every year as far as total number of bodies and also the percentage burial versus cremation.
Okay.
So why do you not cremate the ones you can't find? Is that just...
It's been a long-standing practice in the sense even though we do a due diligence search, we don't want to be in a position that 6 months down the road, a family member may appear and say, well, where is my uncle? And say, well, we cremated him, and some individuals think that would not be a pleasant thing for them to endure. So that's just been our practice, at least for the last 15 years I've been here.
And the cremated remains, what's happened
The
to them?
cremains are maintained by our providers, so we still have access to the cremains if a family does change their mind and step forward and request the cremains.
Do you keep them indefinitely?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, let me jump back. The chairman raised the question, and I want to make sure I understand. On slides 12 and through 14, on the emergency communication side of things, I understood him to say we could reduce the overtime by half to 3/4, which if we're at the 2014 level, about roughly a little over $200,000, that would be somewhere between $100,000 to $150,000. Now, if I go back to slide 12, we're talking about adding 3 positions and costing $158,000. Is that net of what with the reduction in the overtime, or are those separate numbers, Mark?
We didn't run the numbers in that regard. I know it'll impact over time some. What that is, I don't know. I think Kim was just providing an estimate of we can do some more work with that one.
Okay, well, I'm just wanted to understand how those two numbers would interact if we went ahead with the decision package. And I guess the other question I'd tie to it, if we did approve those positions, there is room for one extra person per shift.
Yes.
Okay. On your slide 17, on EMS changes and challenges, I know we talked about the cost for essential medications. Is any of our problem in terms of tied to not only the cost but the availability or getting the right medications or having to use second best medicine? I know we've had some availability issues in the past.
I know that if you can't get them and what's left available, the cost is up. Scott, I don't know if you want to add any more to that or.
That's true. It's a dynamic and fluid process. If we can't get a primary medication, or if medicine dictates that we transition to another medication that's more effective, we endure those cost changes. And it may be lower in some cases, sometimes it may be higher. Typically it's higher, and it's supply and demand. Some medicines are high in demand, very short supply, we pay more money. And so we're kind of at the mercy of the drug manufacturers and our vendors to bear those costs. And again, it changes from week to week, from month to month, what may be available and what's not available. So that's been the trend, that the costs have been going up over the last 2 to 3 years.
Has the availability issue gotten worse, better, or about the same?
It's about the same. It just depends on the week. Right now, it's fairly good right now. We'll be able to get the things that we need or we've used in the past. And we've built into our system redundancy of backup medications and substitutes when we can. And we get them at the lowest cost that we can. But sometimes things change rapidly, and we have to make those adjustments, and it usually costs more than less.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And on slide 52, and the corrections on challenges and changes there, we said we're near capacity on drug court and pretrial services. But that's a key part in terms of trying to keep our jail costs down. And of course, the jail is part of the sheriff's budget, not directly tied to this part of corrections. I wanted to get a little bit more information in terms of how close to capacity we are and what type of constraints we're really facing there, and how that could impact if we get in the middle of the budget year in terms of needing to tap into reserves, or what sort of challenges are we facing?
Mark, you want
Let's take pretrial first. The staffing capacity there is to serve a planned level of 300, but you know that gets people out of the jail. And so I've already presented the manager with the numbers about this. We've had rapid growth this year, and we're bumping up in the 280s now. And so but the dramatic increases from 220 to 280s fast. And so I've already alerted manager about we would at some point, if this continues, need to, what I'd recommend, adding a temporary position with benefits so that we could meet the demand without setting a cap on the program. If you want to go to drug court, we have referrals. We planned this with a capacity in 2008 of 120. We think now with experience it's probably really about 115. We're at 114 today. We have referrals that are in the hopper that are going to push us up into the 120 range right now. But in that we have a small number of staff that do that specialized program. We're also in a staffing transition where one of the people is leaving and transitioning. So we're having to manage that growth in demand. I'm not ready to raise the flag yet and say that we need to either stop referrals for a while, accepting referrals, or we need to add a position to a temporary position is what I recommend with benefits to see what it is, what the growth in demand is. But both of these are a dramatic change in the current year.
Well, the last question I wanted to jump into is also correction related on slide 57. Talk about the increased fee, and looked to me like we're talking about an increase. I don't know if any of these probations would be less than 2 full years, but looks like it's going from $200 over 24 months at the moment to $500 the first year and $300 the second. And I was just questioning, that's a very big percentage increase, and with that population, I was curious if there'd be problems collecting that amount, and especially in terms of if they can't meet that, I guess staying in the Department of Corrections is their other option. But I know the Department of Corrections is trying to push those folks out, and is trying to understand how well we could actually, if we could actually have that work out that way and generate the numbers that are provided here.
So we had a $149,000 reduction in the block grant, and that represents basically a loss of 3 positions if that planning allocation is what carries forward in the state budget. If it's worse, it's worse. So we've started figuring out trying to have a balanced strategy to address this. To be responsive to your question, our advisory board looked at a lot of different options. At the time, there was a bill in the legislature from the Office of Judicial Administration to charge a $50 fee for the less intensive standard probation that court services does, $50 a month. And so they pulled that bill. That's when we started discussing this fee increase, that it shouldn't be an incentive to go to the more expensive, the more intensive supervision to avoid the fee for court services. And then the revenue package. So at any rate, we took an approach to say, if we charged for the first 12 months a $500 fee, we've also become part of the debt set-off person program starting in January. So that attaches and creates a funding stream beyond their time in community corrections to pay back. So it increases, we're getting payments now by joining this program. 2, we weighed, and that attaches on the day that they start. Most probations are 12 months. The average is 18 months. So we decided that a $300 fee in the second year could be used as an incentive to reward positive behavior and reduce that fee down to $100, and be an incentive to successfully complete the probation term. So you could end up with a $600 fee in the end, which would be the same as what court services at $50. But that's the approach. We weighed all of the impacts, and our estimate is based on collecting 50% of the 1,200 new admissions we get in a year will pay in 12 months. So it's a very conservative figure. And then the collection is then long-term. And we don't keep people longer than their probation term if they still owe us fees, because we are part of the debt set-off program.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other commissioners' questions? Commissioner Norton?
Marv, on 911, what are the acceptable ranges and where are we at on that? I didn't see that in there anywhere for response times and everything. If the load continues to go up, it's got to affect that. So where are we at?
Have you looked at that, Kim?
I'm still meeting KPIs, but we're working on very hard. We're working on very long, but we are still meeting KPIs. If it continues to increase at this level, and there's nothing to show that it's not going to increase, then we're going to start having queue times, and then we'll have people going on what's considered hold, because there's just not enough people to answer.
Talk about the nurse, what is it called? Nurse Health Line. Via Christie, we've had that in the community before. This will be only for emergency calls, I understand, but what keeps a person from calling just to use the Nurse Health Line, knowing if they know that it's out there and available?
They will. We think We know they will.
Knowing that they will, have we had any conversations with Wesley or Via Christi to help out with the cost of that? Because it does take some burden off emergency rooms and what they have to do too.
I know we've talked about with the hospitals, but we've not sat down and hammered out any details.
Right, we've had some informal conversations with hospital staff about that in some of the council meetings, and I've met with some of the personnel at Wesley to discuss that particular topic. I think there's interest there because it would lessen the burden on some of the EDs and maybe defer some of these folks off to urgent care, immediate care, primary care, where they can still get their health care needs met, but at a lower cost and in a more timely manner. So I believe there is interest in the community to pursue that, and I think there would be an opportunity for collaboration and to help pay for some of that staffing cost. And it's worked well in other communities. And MedStar, I can tell you, it works very well down there, sharing of that cost for that system they have.
I know there's probably some other places around the country that have shared services like that where it's run out of the county and maybe not out of the hospital, but the hospitals bear some benefit from it, so they pay some of the cost. I'd be interested in us pursuing that, probably faster than slower, because I think there's some real synergy that could be used there. The second thing, same thing on paramedicine. First of all, you're talking two, is that correct?
Yes.
Where would they be located, or would they be fluid? Are they going to be located north, south, east, west, or are they going to be kind of fluid and moving constantly?
Well, they're in the field. I don't think they're going to have a post or.
Right, we would keep them centrally located, and that way, if a call came out through the 911 system that met the criteria that we established, we could send that folks. Again, it's for those that have lower acuity needs, the frequent users of EMS and 911. Those we would establish connections with and send those folks to understand what their need is. We have several frequent users. Our top 50 users produce over 1,300 calls a year. So we could address initially with that high utilizer group and see if we could better meet their needs and match their needs with the right community resource.
And we would not dispatch fire and then EMS at any point on that particular one.
That is correct.
Saving two different units from going out away from their home base. Is that
Not
correct?
that we wouldn't have, we got there to make the assessment, but the majority of the time that would be handled with that particular person that we send out to that address to help manage that patient's need.
Okay. Okay. Where are we at on the acceptable range on your total calls?
As far as our response time reliability KPIs, we're really not hitting that target in the suburban and rural areas and haven't for quite some time, even though we've added additional resources. Again, the demand continues to outpace the limited and finite number of resources we have to respond. So again, we've been able to maintain the urban KPIs, but in suburban and rural areas, we've been struggling for quite some time now and continue to do so.
Is it your thought process that the nurse and the paramedicine folks will help that number?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Talk about the backlog in the Regional Forensic Science Center and how that affects the courts, because it slows up the ability for the criminal justice system to do their work if that front end work is not done. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Tim, do you want to add anything?
Just a fact, we'll use drug cases as an example. Until the laboratory analysis is performed, in many cases, the district attorney or other charging entity will not even bring charges against that individual. If charges are brought in a lot of our cases in the forensic laboratory, we start bumping up against speedy trial issues as far as the requirement to get cases through the system in a certain amount of time. Right now, we're pushing it awful close. We've been working very closely with our law enforcement agencies and the district attorney's office, looking at ways we can streamline our processes so we don't run into these issues. So it's a challenge on that, but because of additional resources that you provided us last year on our drug cases, we're still meeting the needs. In our DUI cases, driving under the influence of drug cases, and our post-mortem tox, we are not meeting the needs. We did get some additional resources, but case volume increases coupled with loss of staff, we still have a way to go to get around that corner. But I believe this year, especially with the decision package is giving us the reagents to do the testing, we should be able to meet that demand.
Okay. Thanks, Doc. Who else does forensics kinds of things? KBI? Does the Wichita PD do any forensics at all, or does it all go
They
through
do
our
computers?
Wichita Police Department has a crime scene unit, so they will collect evidence to submit to us. They also have a forensic computer unit. We do not participate in that. They have one certified late fingerprint examiner, and they brought back a retired detective to help out on that as well. Johnson County has a crime laboratory that does everything except for toxicology. They do blood alcohols, but beyond that, it goes to the state. Right now, the state has shut down their firearms laboratory, so we're the only game in the state right now as far as firearms examination.
Okay. Have we worked through the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to talk about this issue at all? I've only been on it for a couple of 3 meetings, but it seems like to me that having any kind of backlog clogs up the system, and that if you don't unclog it at the front of the system, it doesn't matter what you do at the back end of the system. And I think we ought to really understand that as part of the system, not just by itself for what Dr. Rohrig has to deal with, but how it affects everything else.
We could make it one of our agenda items in the near future. Maybe have Dr. Rohrig come and address the CJCC on. It's probably a good time for a refresher because we have a lot of new people, several new people on the council.
Well, and I would like to hear Dr. Rohrig's presentation, but also like to hear from the DA, the sheriff, and Judge Fleetwood of what it does to the system from their perspective. Does it slow things up? Does it create havoc with some of these cases of pushing them through and getting them through? Because every touch point just adds cost. If we pay for that on the front end and push it through the system quicker and don't have to have the system slogged down, I think that makes sense. Penny wise and pound foolish, you save it there, but you're holding up the court system, and there's a lot of continuances because things aren't done. They don't even file the case until the forensics done. It doesn't make sense to me at all.
Okay,
I think we need to have a conversation.
we'll do that.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions. Looking at page 9 on the handout, I guess it'd be slide number 25. Actually, maybe I'm not quite sure it's the right slide number here, but somewhere I saw that there's a increase in the number of transports. Where is that? It's on one of these slides right here, isn't it? The number of transports is going up. Is that true or is not true?
For EMS?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly what slide that was on, but I did see it earlier anyway.
Let's look at, here's 19 that shows you the graph of the transports going up.
Okay. That's it. Okay. So I'm just curious, out of those transports, are these all non-emergency, or are these emergency and non-emergency together? This is everything. All transports.
Yeah, you'll see the non-emergents would be like from one hospital campus to another, maybe.
Okay, yes. So
And then there's
they're
the-
embedded in this data?
That's in there, right, Scott?
Yes, that's both emergent and non-emergent.
Okay.
All transport.
Yep.
Can you tell us about how many of these are non-emergency transports?
Yeah, we'll go to the,
Well, that's how many calls. And typically, we had about 6,000 non-emergent transport calls, and out of those, we transport almost 98% of that group.
So about 6,000 over the year?
Yes.
Okay.
On this chart up here
I'll
now,
get you an exact number.
Okay, that'd be great.
I just don't have it in this slide.
That's great.
the yellow bars on this chart are the non-emergents.
All right.
That's total calls, but I'll get you the total number of transports for that non-emergent.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, that was one of my questions. Looking at pages 5 and page 3 side by side, slides 8 and 13. Make sure I understand this right. Slide 8 shows that there's 844,000 calls dispatched, and then over on slide 13 it talks about total calls. So does that just mean that that's the difference is the number of people that there was no response? Is that one's 844,000, the other one's it looks like I can't really read the chart again, but it looks like it's about
It's over a million.
over 1 million. So
Yeah, that's all calls coming in. The 844 are the calls that actually got dispatched out.
right. Okay, so a lot of people call 911, and for whatever reason, no dispatch was made. So
Well, yeah, we get 80-some thousand pocket dials a year.
80,000.
And that takes up time because then we have to call them, call them back, get a hold of them, see if there's something going on. Is that right, Kim?
That's right, in the 1 million number, that's inbound and outbound calls. So on those, like, we have to call those back, or maybe they'll call and say, send the police hang up on us, so we have to call them back. So our outbound calls are part of doing a 911 business as well. So that 1 million is inbound and outbound. We average about 660,000 inbound and outbound calls.
In your opinion, do you feel like we've got good information out there to the public on non-emergency numbers for them to call? I mean, I've been doing a little bit of research trying to find out how to find non-emergency numbers. They are out there if you know where to look, but I feel like it's kind of difficult. People are just basically told to call 911. We'll sort it out when you call. Type of deal.
I would agree with that. And the education we try to do right on the pocket dials. We called one person back and said, "Do you have an emergency?" He's like, "No, my phone was in my pocket. It must have dialed." And he goes, and I just seen that on the news the other day. It's like, no, you've just seen it, but they're still doing it. So there's education efforts out there as far as the people that call us say for the first address. They will call 911 to get the number to the first address as well. So there's those kind of numbers to where if you look at maybe a 5th grade education, how can we make it easier for you to find this instead of calling it all our fancy terms? I think that would help a lot.
And I've even been to some of the briefings that some of our county staff have provided to some of the community events I've been to in non-emergency, but they just say, just call 911. We'll just call 911. And I think to myself, we shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
We need to be more effort, I think, on the website perhaps to show non-emergency numbers at the front page. If you have a non-emergency, you have to contact someone in Sedgwick County government. Go here first type of deal. I don't know what to do there, but I think we're creating our own problems by just saying call 911. Maybe that's a safe thing to do, but it also adds burden to you guys and to the department there. And just a comment, I think we could do better there, but just a point to be noted there. On the handout, thank you. Mm-hmm. On the handout, there's shows the fee increases, and that's the very last slide on the last page. That's when it talks about revenue package requests. Is that basically this fee increase sheet? Is that estimated from the fees, or where's that coming from?
I think the one that you see here that I passed out earlier today, that is only related to the Regional Forensic Science Center.
Oh, okay.
The others are contained throughout the presentation on various slides.
Okay, so let me go to the sheet for just a minute. We talk about this. You haven't really, no one briefed this, I don't believe, but I see it laying here. So this is part of this discussion. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Were these fee increases based on some type of analysis that was done, that we make sure we're charging appropriate fees, or is this simply just inflation? We got to kick them up a little bit. How do these increases get? How do these proposals come to be? What was our process to determine these numbers?
Tim?
Commissioner, we looked at our overall costs, we looked at what other providers are charging, and we did just a fully loaded what we spend, what we're bringing in, and looking at that differential, and it appeared that 10% would cover our fees or increased costs and puts us a little ahead of the game. Our goal has always been to be a revenue neutral position on our out-of-county fees. I don't want it to be a cost center, but I don't want to be a revenue center either. We also looked at when the last time we raised fees was, that was in 2012, a lot of part of the year when we saw that. The other thing is embedded into our costs, which is really not reflected well, is our costs are based upon incremental expenditures. We don't factor in maintenance contracts on instruments. As our instrument gets older, our maintenance contracts go up significantly. So we factored all that in to come up with what we felt was a reasonable fee increase that would make sure that we stay close to that revenue neutral position.
So at the end of the year, can you summarize and say at the end of the year we had a shortfall by some amount, or we had a surplus by some amount based on the action of charging these fees over the period of the year for these types of services? Is any type of end of the year analysis that says we're close, or?
In a general sense, we do, but again, it's based solely upon incremental costs and incremental revenues. So we don't factor in cost of the building, for instance, utilities and things like that. So always want to be a little bit in the black just to cover those costs. So yes, we do evaluate that on an annual basis to make sure that Commissioner Ramsall and others, rightly so, every year asking, are we subsidizing out of county? And I always want to be in a position to say, no, we're not subsidizing, for instance, Butler County.
Is this a an annual change that these fees are looked at every year and adjusted every year?
We look at them every year. Are they adjusted every year? No. Like I said, our last fee increase was in 2012.
Okay.
One part of that was in 2008. That's a guesstimate, but it was around that time frame.
Okay. I'm sorry I missed that, your point there. I didn't hear that earlier. I wanted to ask the question. I apologize. On page 13, the burial fees, I just noticed that the burial fees have shot up in 1 year. Can someone explain why that would be? Why the step?
That was a new contract, right, Tim?
It was a new contract that we had to let our existing contract expire. Finding plots to bury individuals for providers, exceedingly difficult. Sometimes they have to reach outside the county. So they just passed on their significant cost increase to us. And we only had one provider that would do the package deal with burial and cremation. So we were kind of beholden to them, and the cost did go up significantly from our previous contract.
I'm just curious. Are these bodies buried in Sedgwick County somewhere?
Most are, but there's some that are buried. It's wherever the provider can find a plot to actually bury somebody. I believe we have some in Kingman. I'm not pretty sure on that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chairman.
All right, I have a couple questions. How often do we bury an indigent and then family members show up later and saying, okay, yeah, I want the body?
That has not fortunately happened yet.
Okay. So I guess I would make the argument that it'd be pretty safe to go ahead and cremate them, I guess is what I'm trying to evaluate in my mind, I guess. So, I mean, I understand the concern. But okay. For Scott, I have a couple questions. You said we get 1,300 calls from how many people? Repeat it.
About 1,300 annually from our top 50 users that use EMS. The ones that utilize EMS quite frequently. We took a snapshot of who are those top 50 folks and how often are they calling, and that equated to about 1,300 calls in a year.
Okay. Now, is EMS just still working off this 40-60 split as far as 40% of the time you want your guys working on calls and 60% is admin?
I think that's, you're referring to the unit hour utilization rate, and again, that's just one unit of measure that we use within the department to look at workload and how that's dispersed throughout either an individual crew or in the aggregate, the whole service. So we're still looking at that. That continues to go up as well. It's not in this material. I can provide that to you and explain that a little bit more and what that really means. But again, that's just one indicator out of the many that we look at.
But that's still the
It's still going up.
I understand, but which your target is what? In the past, you've said it's that 40-60 split.
Right.
Okay.
But that's only looking at the time they're actually on a task at 911, they're on a call. It doesn't measure other pieces of time when they're actually doing things like entering documentation and ticket work, filling other locations, that type of thing. That's not a measurement of everything that they do each and every day.
No, I understand, but I continue to be concerned about that, as I've said before. Okay. And then the last thing, the day reporting. Oh, there's Mr. Manager.
Yep.
The day reporting, the idea of the day reporting services and charging the cities for those sorts of things.
I have prepared, I've read the report, I'm preparing a request to the city manager that will go to him this week.
I mean, okay, so are we going to put that in a formal revenue decision package, or no? Or you just, I mean,
Let me have these conversations.
okay,
It's either going to be yes, that, or some other alternative.
okay, all right. That's all the questions I had.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, next.
All right. Commissioners, up next we have Human Resources, and Eileen McNichol, the director, is here. For that, we will be on page 52 of your binders behind the General Government tab. And we may give our folks a moment to clear out.
Thank you.
I'm sure it's helpful.
That's not something
Just for this department.
everything Marvin.
Right.
Whoops. Thank you.
Oh, there's nobody.
Yeah, his hand is.
Okay, all right, Eileen, I think whenever you're ready, feel free.
All right,
I'll get to it.
I'll go ahead and get started. I'm Eileen McNichol, your HR director, and this afternoon I have two staff members with me, Heather Bell, who is our benefits manager, and Ayana Pearson, who is our office manager and the budget manager. The other three managers that we have are Robbie Berry, who is our work environment manager, and she's at jury duty. And we've got Amy Berman, who is our comp manager, and she does not work on Tuesdays. And then Greg Baker is our employee development manager, and he is currently training. So our mission at Human Resources is to partner with divisions and departments to hire, compensate, support, and develop a diverse workforce that's dedicated to delivering high-quality services to the community. And the departments in our division are HR administration, compensation and classification, benefits, which is not a tax-funded department, and work environment, which incorporates employment and employee development. HR administration's mission is in supporting the total reward strategy and providing a positive employee experience through compensation, benefits, work environment, and employee development programs and services. The role is for HR administration is strategic planning, records administration, and policy interpretation. And the purpose is to provide proactive HR programs and services promoting effectiveness, productivity, consistency, compliance, and efficiencies for all employees. And we do this to increase attraction, employee engagement, and retention. And we have 5.8 full-time equivalents that provide these services. Our HR administration budget request, you can see there for HR administration, is $346,909. And for the one program that we manage in HR administration is our retirement appreciation, which is $7,200. Our compensation and classification department's mission is to provide a positive employee experience through attraction, engagement, and retention programs and services, and their role is compensation and position management, with the purpose of providing a compensation plan that promotes a satisfied and engaged workforce through attracting, motivating, and retaining qualified employees. And this, of course, is available to all current and potential employees. The pay structure is regularly reviewed and audited for compliance, viability, promoting equity throughout the organization, and we have 2.85 full-time equivalents that provide this service to the county. The Compensation and Classification Department's mission is to provide a positive employee experience, and we do this through another program, a Family Medical Leave Administration. We have one full-time equivalent that provides this function to the county, and this person ensures that we are treating all of our employees consistently and in accordance with the Family Medical Leave Act. And this is for all eligible, FMLA eligible employees in the county. We don't have any changes that we've made in compensation and classification, but our challenges are that we have budgetary constraints to allow us to have a pay structure that supports market equity. We currently are on average 3.4% below market after the adjustments were made last year due to the Evergreen study. And then from the Evergreen study, we also have resulting wage compression that was caused by the pay range minimums being adjusted. So our budget request for compensation and classification has not changed, and we're asking for $239,173, and for our FML administration, $69,492. Our Work Environment Department's mission is to provide a positive employee experience through attraction, engagement, and retention programs and services, and the main function is for engagement and retention. The purpose is in helping to develop and support a work environment that facilitates providing high-quality services to the community, and all county departments receive these services. And this helps address reducing turnover costs and increasing employee engagement. And we have one full-time equivalent that provides this service to the county. Employment is also under work environment. That role is for consistent and compliant employment practices with the purpose of guiding all the county departments through all aspects of the hiring process, ensuring consistency and compliance. And this allows us to improves our ability to attract and to hire a diverse and highly qualified workforce and reduces our legal exposure. And we have two full-time equivalents that provide this service to the county. Employee relations is also housed in work environment, and the role there is for conflict management, mediation, and internal complaint processes. And this allows us to bridge the relationship between employees and employers and the employer. This allows us to prevent potential litigation costs and increases employee satisfaction. We have one full-time employee that provides this service to the county. So the work environment budget is listed here. Work environment management at $108,772. Employee relations management at $74,145. Our service awards program at $9,000. Employee recognition program at $11,200. Employment management at $158,691. Our background checks, drug screening, and testing at $44,143. And our recruitment events at $7,000. Our next department is employee development. The role is for training and development. The purpose is to provide employees the skill sets that they need to deliver high-quality public services. And this helps increase our overall effectiveness and efficiency of our county employees. And we have two full-time equivalents providing this service. Our changes and challenges for employee development are we need to fund a comprehensive learning management system that's going to allow us to schedule, track courses, report courses, and have online courses for all county departments and employees. The budget request for employee development is for the management of that department, $168,022, new employee orientation costs of $2,050, external vendors of $35,000, our employee assistance program at $27,000, and employee learning at $35,000. So all of that together for our division, our budget totals $1,342,797, which is a little under this year's budget. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, The FMLA administration person, what exactly do they do?
They maintain, they manage the paperwork that has to be done to track how people, if they're eligible for family medical leave, how much time that they have available for family medical leave, and they interact with all the departments to make sure that they transfer that information to the departments so that time can be properly managed, and we don't allow people to go over their allotted legal allotment.
Is that something? Is that not tracked in the new system that we have?
E-timesheets, it's a part of that, but it still requires the administration of the leave itself.
And how many FMLA requests do we have a year as a county? Do you know?
I don't have that exact number, but I can get that for you.
Okay.
I mean, there are quite a few, and the most difficult one is interim leave. And that's when someone has a condition that requires that they need to be gone for a period of time during a work time.
Intermittent?
Intermittent leave, right.
Okay. I'd kind of like to know how many.
Okay? I'll get that information to you.
Commissioners, any other questions? I don't see any.
All right, thank you very much.
Next.
Commissioners, next we have a presentation from the County Counselor's Office, and I believe Mike Capone is here to do that presentation for us. And we will be on page 28 of the binder.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Papoon, Acting County Counselor. I'll have to admit I'm somewhat of a neophyte to this process, so I want to thank Carly Sanchez, our budget analyst, and Debbie Downs, who's handing out something right now, who has all the answers and is our office budget expert. So, anyway.
No, that's how much.
How's the page?
Just a little less than last.
Arrow down. Oh, like that? I did that. Okay. Thank you. The mission and services, the mission statement for the Office of the County Counselor is that we provide high-quality, nonpartisan legal services to the county commissioners, elected and appointed officials, departments, and advisory boards. Okay. Arrow down. The services that we provide through our offices and our different cost centers. The County Counselor's Office piece encompasses the administrative functions of the office, responsible for management, budgeting, purchasing, and reception services. Our general legal services is the in-house legal counsel services that we provide to the Board of County Commissioners, elected and appointed officials, advisory boards. These services include oral and written legal opinions, representation in legal proceedings, the review and preparation of contracts, resolutions, policies, procedures, and mitigation of all cases of liability against the county, including claims originating from the jail. Our Sedgwick County Court was created to enforce county codes and resolutions through the criminal prosecution of violators. It was created by the Board of County Commissioners in 1990, and we're responsible for the prosecution of all cases filed in county court. And this budget also includes the judges that we use in the county, pay for the county court system. And then we have external legal counsel and legal expenses, what we often refer to as our outside legal counsel. And this expense established budget authority primarily for payment to attorneys engaged to represent the county in lawsuits and situations requiring special expertise, including any associated legal expense for both in-house and outside counsel. In many cases, we have to use this too when there are conflicts in cases that our office can't handle. Here are the budget requests for 2016 for these different services. County Counselor's Office is gone up slightly from last year, which I think was $102,844. General Legal Services is down slightly from last year. I would also assume with some salary savings this year, it might be down somewhat significantly. County Court is $156,456. That's very slightly up. And really, the biggest variable that we have is our outside counsel, which we budgeted this year at $312,429, which I think is more than we budgeted last year, but is less than what we actually spent, with a total division budget of $1.883,645,000. Just, I think we've done this in the past, but just to give you an idea of what we have spent, because this is the biggest variable we have. We have little control, or somewhat little control, on when we get sued, what kind of lawsuits we're facing, and this can vary from year to year. But here's a 10-year history, essentially, of what we have budgeted and what we've expended on outside legal counsel. I will say in the last few years we've had several significant cases in which we've at least two of the cases used outside legal counsel. In one case we used our inside counsel, Mike North, and in all three cases got a favorable jury verdict on three cases that could have had some very significant consequences if we had lost those cases. You'll notice, I think in 2011 we had several of these cases, including one other jail case that was of significant impact to the county, and that's why that number is so high that particular year. I will say that we did, about 7 years ago, hire an attorney that had quite a bit of litigation experience to help keep this cost down, and he does a lot of in-house legal work for the county, and he's invaluable in assisting some of our outside counsel too to keep their costs down, their hourly rate, by doing a lot of the legwork that they do and assist co-chairing some of the litigation that they do. Currently we have, I think we have 8 cases pending. We have 8 claims pending, 12 105B claims pending right now, 8 lawsuits. The 105B claims are a process that plaintiffs have to go through prior to filing a lawsuit, where they have to give us notice and give us an opportunity to research and respond to these claims. And we have 2 KHRC EEOC claims pending against the county. 24 cases resolved in 2014, 3 federal cases, 6 district court, 1 appeal we won in the 10th Circuit, 3 KHRC EEOC, and we resolved 11 12 105B claims. And that's our budget, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions? I don't see any.
That's it.
Thanks, Mike.
Paintings.
All right, Commissioners, we are scheduled for a 10-minute break, and so if we could resume at 2:45 with your permission.
All right.
Thank
That's
you.
what we'll do. Well, we were almost ready to start.
All right.
All right, you're on.
Okay, I think we're back from break. So the very next presentation we have is from Tom Stoltz, our MABCD director, and you will find that department's pages beginning on page 363, which is pretty well back in the public safety section. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Tom.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tom Stoltz, Director of Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department, here to go over our city and county budget. Mission statement for the MABCD highlights 3 areas: safety, fair and equitable codes and rules, and customer service. We stress, since the merger in January of 2013, reliable and valid service to customers. So customers can expect the same kind of service every time, and the service that we're providing is valid in that it has meaning and is needed code, and not just something that's been on the books for a number of years. This is all the moving pieces of the department. There are 4 main areas: permitting and licensing administration, building and construction, which includes plan review, the neighborhood inspection and nuisance area, which is predominantly City of Wichita, although there is one county nuisance inspector, and a group of ancillary working entities that do signs and zoning codes, both city and county, and water well and wastewater inspections, which is county only. In an average year, this department will issue around 25 to 30,000 kinds of permits. They'll do 65 to 70,000 inspections. They'll review 700 commercial plans. They'll do over 1,200 sign inspections. They'll do 2,000 water well and wastewater inspections. In 2014, we had 675 new houses start in Sedgwick County, 409 brand new commercial structures go up. The predominant, this chart is ever changing because as city employees leave, they're being replaced with county employees if they're part of the building and construction side of the merger. Talk more about that in a bit. Thus far, we've spent a little over 2 years going through the technical work of creating this merger. We've merged codes, we've merged advisory boards, we've reclassified positions, city and county. We've had a new mission statement, brand new performance measures, all of which are reliable and valid. Consolidated licensing. We've consolidated permits now to where if you're doing business in Sedgwick County, you only do one of those. You don't have to go to the city of Wichita anymore, and you don't have to go to Sedgwick County. You can come to either location and get permits or licensing. We're in the process of updating codes. I'm going to be back here tomorrow to talk about 2012 residential. We did the trade codes at the end of 2014. We have developed procedure manuals to ensure consistent customer service. We have fixed certification flaws with our inspectors. When we did the merger in 2013, we had some county inspectors who had no certifications and some city inspectors who had their certifications lapse, mostly due to budget constraints on both sides. We've fixed that. All inspectors out working today are certified the way they need to be. And we've initiated the use of combination inspectors. That leaves us with the future challenges in front of you. And 3 of these, if we can get accomplished, will spell the end of the merger. The merger will be completed at that point, and then we can just start working as a regular department. We need to move into a consolidated service center along with planning department, which has been talked about since 2012. We need to transfer departmental software from city to county. This is a very software-intensive department. Everything that we do has to be data tracked and captured. Our inspectors in the field have laptops. Everything that they enter into inspection has to be captured and retained. So, and right now we're working under 2 data systems. I have a City of Wichita computer on my desk and I have a Sedgwick County computer on my desk, and it's borderline untenable. We need to get to a county system. And with a building move, we can get that accomplished. We also need to migrate to one departmental budget. So I have to do this exact same exercise on the city side of the street as well. It's not that big a deal, but it would be nice to have a single budget, similar to what the planning department does on the county or on the city side, only this department would report to this governing body through budget process. There's a number of renovation processes we're going through with the neighborhood inspection side. That is really only city employees that impacts, but it's time taking, and the city council is very involved in that. Then there's a discussion of, yes, sir?
Is the intent to get that out of your department at some point?
I think, well, the next bullet talks about ancillary group discussion. And when we did the merger in 2013, the neighborhood inspection piece of the city was one of those ancillary groups. Wastewater and water well management, we had at the time animal control, and signs and sign code was our ancillary groups. I think there's discussion that we need to have in the future on what stays and what could maybe be further consolidated between the city of Wichita and county. I'll give you a great example now. We have floodplain discussion going on. Kelly Dixon has spoken in front of you guys a couple of times. He does the same thing at public groups all over the county. There's nobody that knows more about floodplain than Kelly Dixon. The city of Wichita has a position that does the exact same thing. And the floodplain impacts the whole county. It doesn't just involve City of Wichita or City of Bentley, City of Colwich. It impacts all of Sedgwick County proper. So there are some opportunities there. Neighborhood inspection, whether we keep it in this department or not, has to exist. There is one single inspector in the county, nuisance inspector. He did almost 200 cases last year. So it does happen in the county, though not with the frequency that it does in the city. And throughout the merger, we've been crystal clear. We have kept those entities segmented. The county inspector only does county work, the city inspectors only do city Wichita work, and never the two shall cross. So we're managing them separately right now, but whether they stay in this department or not, I think it's a discussion we should
How
have.
many people are on the city division?
There are a total of 21 bodies there. That's 18 inspection staff and 3 administrative staff.
So is that time you spend on that reflected on how your salary is paid? I mean, as far as, does the city offset some of that because that's...
The city pays all of that salary, all of the neighborhood inspector's salary.
Well, what about your salary that would be attributable to that?
Half of the city, which my salary today, you'll see it in the book, half Sedgwick County, half city Wichita.
But what I'm saying is...
Should it be 70-30?
It should be somewhere different. We're splitting the cost of the MABCD, but that's not something that I think we should
I don't
be
disagree with that.
Okay.
The ancillary group discussion, I think we talk about into the future, and then the biggest challenge for the department, and we're doing it. We've been doing it since the merger, and I think once we get merged into a one-stop shop, we can really get our hands dirty. Is to modify existing zoning and building codes to promote and facilitate development, which both sides of the street want. City Council wants it, County Commission wants it. So that's our future challenge. Our budget request include $660,000 for permit and license administration, over $500,000 for plan review and building inspection. The land use pieces, the ancillary group, wastewater, water well inspectors, $335,000. And then you'll see Wichita reimbursement. We've created a fourth cost center in 2013. So as the county takes on what used to be city positions, it is funded from that mechanism, and that number is going to continue to grow. For 2016, we're prognosticating $1.2 million. It could be higher, could be lower, depending on how many city employees leave. So that is a cost center which will continue to grow into the future, for a total budget of $2,795,754. When we started the merger in 2013, there were 75 employees, 15 of which were county, 60 of which were city. Today, we set at 75 employees, 30 of which are county, 45 of which are city. So you're seeing this slow progression, this slow takeover of county employees in the city chairs. Now, I will mention what Chairman just mentioned a minute or so ago. Of those 75 positions, 21 of those are city positions, which will always remain city positions. So they will always maintain a little piece of a city budget, even when we migrate the building and construction budget, hopefully all under Sedgwick County. I have 6 decision packages, all of which we're going to recommend be funded from City Wichita Special Revenue Fund, and I'll just quickly go over them for you. Some of them are directly tied to a one-stop service shop building concept. Plan review upgrade, for example. Currently, when architects and engineers bring development plans to us, they have to bring 3 sets of plans. One for us, one for fire, one for whatever public works entity we're in, whether it's a county or city. Those are large-scale plans that they have to drag in. We have to unfurl those plans. We have to look at them. We do our code review on them. Many, many times there are minor changes, and when we send those back, they have to redo all those entire plans again, so another 3 sets of plans. We've talked about, and we're in dialogue with architects now and engineers to enhance technology where we can do that electronically. Now, there'll always have to be one paper set of plans, and that is the set of plans that sits out on that job site so that contractors and code officials and fire officials, everybody can look at the same sheet of music. So there'll always be one set of paper plans, but we'd like to digitize the remainder of the plans to where we could archive it that way. The architect can archive it that way, and we can keep those plans forever. One of the decision packages talks about archiving. I'll tell you kind of the current state of affairs there. So when we go to another building, we would like to unfurl this technology and get as paperless as possible. Inspector mobile work capacity has to happen whether we go to a building or not. The current mobile capacity is 4 years old now. There are superior technologies out there. I remember when we went to laptops in public safety, police, fire codes, and that was new technology back in the 90s. And now in this field, handheld devices are clearly superior because you don't have to double enter data any longer. Right now, an inspector goes into a building, he takes a notebook in, a clipboard in, he does his inspection, he has to go back out, sit in his car, and re-enter the data back into the laptop so it feeds into the system and notifies contractors of their inspection results. With PDA, they're in the building, they can enter the data one time, send it real time out. It's going to be faster, and and with inspectors, depending on the time of year, time is really money for us because we need to keep those guys moving. They'll stop an average of 18 to 22 times a day. They'll do 20, 25 inspections, and in peak building season, those guys are hustling back and forth. So anything we can do to save them time, make them move quicker, and yet give better customer service, we should take a look at. That's has to happen in 2016, whether we move into the building or not. That technology will have to be upgraded. Scanners and software for permit writers. Again, we're just trying to make this less paper-driven, more electronic-driven, and make it faster and better for the customer to give better records. Currently, when people come in with building plans like a home, they'll have ancillary documentation, they'll have drawings, they'll maybe have some CUP kind of language, all of which we create a hard file, and those hard files have to exist forever and ever. If we had scanners on the desk, we would simply scan that information in, the customer could have their copies back, and it's forever kept and doesn't have to be kept hard file in any location. So that's another piece of technology we'd like to move toward. The archive capacity is the same discussion we're having countywide. What can we do with paper documents? I will tell you that one of the things that concerned me most when I switched over to this department in 2013 was how documents were archived. City of Wichita stopped scanning and stopped doing microfilm in 2007 due to budget cut. So what's happened is paper has been stacked over at Rounds and Porter since that time. It is in no logical order. If you wanted a building plan from that time period, 2007 to 2013, we'll find it for you, but it's going to take, you as a customer are going to have to wait days and maybe weeks until we can get that found. Since that time, we're still taking paper plans over there, but there's a little bit of semblance of order, at least by the year. Ultimately, that all needs to be electronic and digital. The amount of paper that this department produces in a year's time is immense, and we're always going to have problems storing it, and the real key is we're going to have problems retrieving it. And anytime there's any type of lawsuit or building issue, or a person wants to go in and remodel a builder, we need to resurrect those old plans and review them. And so we just want to be part of the bigger county system of what can we do to get our documents archived. And that $50,000 is a guess. We have a large amount of historical data that needs to be scanned. I don't know if 50,000 is going to be enough. Ideally, when we move to the new building, we draw a line in the sand, and everything forward is electronic and paperless. But that still leaves us a mess from 2007 to 2015 that we'll have to someday reconcile. Sedgwick County codes did a very similar mechanism. They just put the plans in the basement over at 1144 South Seneca. We're going to have to reconcile that at some point. Code manual purchases, as you are aware, we are adopting or in the process of adopting 12 codes. The 2015 codes are out in print now. We need to procure those in 2016 to review them to determine if we want to migrate that way or not. We can't do it unless we have the code manuals. And finally, inspector uniforms. This has kind of been a pet peeve of mine since coming into the merger. We have county employees and city employees out there working in T-shirts and jeans. On a best case day, that's unprofessional, and on a worst case day, it's dangerous. They need to be marked as government employees. We're out on people's private property. We need to be clearly identified as government employees when we walk onto the site. Now, what happens in reality in building and construction is these inspectors have been around forever, and they all know each other. But we've hired new inspectors in the past, and it's difficult for them to walk into an area and with no marking, no government marking. They pull up in a government vehicle, but if they're not lucky enough to have been seen driving up in that government vehicle, nobody knows who they are. So we need to just professionalize that to some degree. So all total, that's $295,500 of decision package dollars. There is special revenue fund on the city side available for this, and my recommendation is we would get into that fund if these are approved. So with that, I will be glad to answer any general questions about the budget.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Norton?
No questions, but I just have to compliment you on a very thorough and thoughtful process for a very new department that's had its share of chinks in the armor. Thank you,
Yeah,
Tom. I really
thank you, Tim.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Tom, the other, about a month ago, we talked about possibly doing digital blueprints and that type of thing. And is this request, was this known at that time? You're doing $100,000 for the plan review upgrade and $50,000 for the archival. It's kind of going in that direction, it looks like.
It is,
So,
sir. Yes.
has this been a long-term plan?
Not long-term, but once we started getting to where we looked like we were going to move buildings, it would be extremely difficult to implement that now in the current system. It's doable, but we'd have to do it in 2 locations. It'd be more efficient to wait till we get 1 location, wherever that is. So we've been talking about it for 6 months. We're now getting our hands dirty. I've got architect meeting on Friday with 6 of the major architects in town that provide probably about 80% of the plans to us. And we're going to talk about what they would like to see us have, what would be efficient for them. So it's been a theory for all these months, and we're going to begin to really tack it down now and put some numbers to it and talk to the customer about what they want to see happen. So been around, but it crystallized a month or 2 ago when we had that discussion.
Okay, so I would think that the architects, the designers, planners, engineers, the people who do these types of plans, they use common software somewhat that you guys would have access to. They can actually share a file. You guys would basically open up the file, it would display that way?
I think so. Now, they all might use a little something different. That's part of the reason we're having this meeting on Friday, is to begin to determine how many different things are out there and what we could all do together. Because if we can just grab the 6 or 8 large architect firms, we can still take in paper plans from we're not going to stop doing business with the little guy, but we could really cut down on 80-90% of our papers. So we'll have that discussion and determine exactly who has capacity to do what.
So do you think the architects and those folks, they'll actually just send you guys a file, most likely, that you guys take a look at it?
That's correct.
I actually have to hand carry it over there. So
right.
The issue of being in the downtown corridor is not quite as important if this was to be put in place?
From that facet, not as important. From other facets, still important that we have a downtown presence.
Okay. When you mentioned the special revenue fund from the city, can you elaborate on that? What does that mean as far as fee funds?
Sure. Yeah. Both departments, Sedgwick County Code and Office of Central Inspection, Wichita, they collected fees over the years. In the city of Wichita budget scheme, 100% of the operation of central inspections was user fees, and that was placed into a special fund that they had authority to create, and that money could be spent for nothing else, and had to be spent for the operation of this department. The county has also had user fees coming in, but every dollar we generate on the county side goes into the general fund. It's viewed as property tax dollars. So there is no separation, if you will, between revenue we're bringing in and anybody else's budget that's going to talk in here that has general fund budget. So it was a different philosophical way of budgeting. And I don't know, we've had discussion about that. I'm not sure the county has statutory authority to create that special revenue fund. I know Commissioner Peterjohn and I have talked about that, and we've talked with law. But the special revenue fund still exists over in the city today. It is a separate and distinct budget. The way we're currently doing Visit City projects, those fees go into that pile, and county projects, that money comes over to county general fund.
Is it safe to say that the majority of the work you guys will be doing, if it comes from the architects, the big companies that are doing a lot of the work, doing house plans and commercial building plans, things like that, that'll all probably be transmitted through this electronic format. But you'll still have some small stuff. If someone wants to build a garage and they draw it on paper themselves or what, you'll still do those types of things as well, right?
Sure.
Okay.
And let me let you know, the only time we plan review, the only time we need sets of plans in is on commercial properties. We do not need to see, we do not do plan review on residential properties.
Okay.
They may or may not choose to bring in plans for us when they're doing their building permit for that.
Very good. All right. Thank you. That's a good explanation. Appreciate you.
Commissioner Peterjohn?
Let me get a better understanding. You mentioned some of the challenges in terms of older documents and retrieving. Are there any statutory requirements that you have in terms of keeping track of older documents?
We had a meeting with document archive specialists from the city and the county and legal from city and county probably 2 or 3 months ago to have that discussion. We're still trying to determine through each legal department what our requirements will be. I don't know of any statutory requirements. There are some policy requirements that each governing body may have that we'll have to honor and adhere to. And just looking at this run, Commissioner, for the last couple of years, I'll tell you what we can never get rid of is building plans. They have to live forever because buildings live forever. Even 100 years from now, somebody could be looking at the Cabela's out there on Webb Road and wanting to remodel it or do something different with that building, and we need to have that plan accessible. All of the other paper, the permits and the licenses, I think should have a life and a death. And on the county side, I believe that number is 5 years before we can purge. On the city side, currently it's 3, and we're trying to get to a resolution where we could just do that the same. So we're in discussion about that very topic.
Okay, because I was trying to understand in terms of, from an archival point of view, I mean, we've got several departments, I mean, going here in the county that go back literally to when the county was founded with in the clerk and register of deeds office. But I wanted to understand, I mean, if someone wanted to go back and find plans for, say, Century 2, which is roughly half 50 years old, or this building that's closer to 65 years old, 55 years old. Would those documents be available?
They
or
exist on
something
microfilm.
accessible?
Yeah, they exist on microfilm. Both departments, well, the city department religiously did microfilm, and then they got into a little bit of Laserfish in the 06 time period, but before that they were microfilming all the plans historically. And we've got microfilm over there from 70, 80, 90 years ago of building plans. Now the problem with microfilm is it's like any other medium. It can get old, it can get stale, and that needs to be digitized as well. But in the scheme of things, that's down our plate a ways. We've got paper plans sitting in a non-controlled heat environment and cool environment, wet environment over at Mounds and Porter that we've got to reconcile relatively quickly.
Well, I wanted to get a better understanding in terms of what type of archiving and the archival problem, especially when you've got two separate departments, and I'm sure the county and city policies were not identical.
Yeah, they're close. I mean, they're more similar than they are different, but there are some nuances between the two.
Thank you.
Commissioner Norton?
Kind of dovetail on that, Tom. I think it would be prudent to talk to Bill Meek and maybe Kelly, because they've gone through that process in the last few years, and they had huge amount of records, a lot of them paper, some of them microfilm, and what they had to go through, some of the steps, who they used. You may have already done that.
We're meeting with people who were part of that process, not necessarily Bill and Kelly particularly, but people who were part of that process to give us some suggestion and advice, and it was a wealth of information when we met with them a couple months ago. But
you've already started that.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's all I have.
Looks like that's it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tom.
Our final presentation for today, then, Commissioners, is the Division of Human Services, Tim Kaufman, and we will begin on page 426, which is just behind your Human Services tab. And Tim, I
Thank you.
Step in. I'll pass those on.
Yeah, so good.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tim Kaufman, Division of Human Services. With me today I have Marilyn Cook with ComCare. I have Dee Stout, the Director of the CDDO. I've got Annette Graham with Aging, and Adrian Burnlutz with the Health Department. The mission of the division is to promote health and wellness, independence, and improved functioning for individuals served by those departments. And the smallest department within the division is the director's office. There are 3 of us, and we do 3 primary things. We provide oversight and direction to the departments within the division, seeking efficiency opportunities so that they can collaborate and we can be as administratively efficient as possible. We interface with social service providers in the community. In particular, we monitor contracts for UMOD and the Child Advocacy Center. And then we have 2 supportive housing service programs where we serve chronically homeless individuals, Shelter Plus Care program, and the Housing First program. And within the director's office, some of the changes that we're addressing, the primary change is that the funding agreement with UMOD to help them with their capital campaign completes in 2015, and so that $100,000 has been removed from the budget for 2016. And we continue to seek efficiencies as we move forward because money's tight. Much of the funding for these programs comes through the state, and so there's opportunities for efficiencies that we try and seek out and implement. The Director's Office budget request in property tax funds is just over $600,000. The Housing First program is funded equally with the City of Wichita. We serve 64 individuals, and the cost of that is split between the city and the county. And we fund the Child Advocacy Center, and those costs are shared with the City of Wichita and the state of Kansas. And then we've got some administrative costs related to operating the division. And in terms of non-tax funds for the Director's Office, there's just over $900,000, and those relate to the housing vouchers for the Shelter Plus Care program. Shelter Plus Care housing is directed to individuals who are chronically homeless and have a corresponding disability, and so that's the voucher money for that housing program. The next department on the list is ComCare, and their mission is to help people with mental health and substance abuse needs to improve the quality of their lives. There are a number of different programs that happens in. Outpatient services is mental health services for individuals, for adults, and we've served about 5,500 people last year, and those services are primarily therapy services and medication management services provided by professionals that work for ComCare. And as you'll see as we go through other ComCare departments, many of the services are delivered by both staff and partners. In this instance, this is delivered by staff. Crisis Services is a service you may all be familiar with. It's available on a 24-hour basis. It is available over the phone, in person, and we've got a mobile crisis unit that will go out as needed. And there are probably 80,000 services that are identified there. Almost 75,000 calls answered by the crisis line in 2014. Rehabilitation services are services that are delivered both to adults and children, adults experiencing severe and persistent mental illness, children that are designated as severely emotionally disturbed, and about 1,800 adults and 2,500 children are served. These are children and adults who receive case management services, and the point of those services is to try and help folks maintain and manage their symptoms so that they're able to retain in the community and be served at the lowest possible, least expensive method rather than hospitalizations. And this is a service that's a good example of a service. Some of it is delivered by ComCare staff, and other services are delivered by community partners. Addiction treatment services served almost 1,500 people last year, and that's to work with people to either achieve or maintain sobriety and a drug-free lifestyle. And those services are delivered at the Addiction Treatment Service Program and also in the municipal and district drug court. Challenges and changes for ComCare include the full implementation of a community crisis center with coordinating those efforts with community partners. There's been a partial implementation. There's been some very significant positive results in that regard, and they tied directly to the second issue. The state hospital for this catchment area is Osawatomie State Hospital. Because of some safety issues in that location, they've had to reduce their cap, the number of bed spaces that they have, from 206 down to 146. We've previously talked about a moratorium that the state could impose to limit the number of to exclude involuntary admissions to the state hospital, and so ComCare is working very closely with the local hospitals and with the state to try and work under that new 146 capacity cap to make sure that moratorium doesn't get invoked. And the Community Crisis Center services have helped greatly over the last few months to keep people from going to the state hospital. And then tomorrow, in fact, you'll see an agenda item about integrating primary care between physical health and behavioral health in coordination with Grace Med. That's another big project for the department. The 2016 budget request for property tax funds for ComCare is $4.5 million, and those funds go to the SCOPE program, the Consolidated Billing Program for Health and EMS, the 18th Judicial District Court, and then administrative support for the department. And the non-tax fund budget request for ComCare is just over $37 million. The bulk of that is going to be earned revenue, third-party payments, much of that being Medicare, Medicaid, and then private insurance. There are two decision packages within the division. Both of them relate to ComCare, and they're on page 4. They started on page 484. The first request is for an additional patient billing representative for the consolidated billing EMS billing function. In 2014, about mid-year, there were 5 positions added to ComCare's staffing table, and we transitioned from, we helped EMS transition from an external third-party contract for EMS billing to that service being delivered in-house. And we saved about $150,000 that first year because it was a partial year. 2015, we project to save a little over $300,000 over the cost of the former contract. But as you've seen from EMS, calls and runs continue to increase, and we would like to add an additional position to make sure that we're collecting those revenues on a timely and efficient basis. Even if we, so the request is for $59,393 and 1 FTE. Even if we add that position, we'll still be saving considerably over the former contract by doing this work in-house. And the other decision package relates to state hospital transportation. State statute indicates that the sheriff is responsible for the transportation of involuntary patients to the state hospital. Over 20 years ago, and maybe it's been over 30 years ago, there was an agreement that was made between the sheriff, the community mental health center, and the local hospital, Via Christi, to try and share those expenses. And that's the way things had been for probably 20 years. And over time, reimbursement rates changed and policies changed, and so there was no advantage to the hospital to participate in that program, in that funding, and so they've backed out. ComCare's revenue fund has continued to receive pressure from the state, and so they've had to make a number of different changes, including some RIFs and some contract amendments for community partners. So we're requesting that the ComCare portion of that transportation contract be funded as if it were a sheriff responsibility, and this $117,000 would make the department whole, and that money could either be in the ComCare budget, and we would continue to administer that contract, or it could go to the sheriff. And I assume that the sheriff would continue to rather have contract staff deliver that rather than have his deputies run folks back and forth. The CDDO is the next department that we'll talk about. Their mission is assisting people with developmental disabilities to receive quality services and achieve greater independence. They have a number of different programs to do that. Challenging Behaviors is a program that helped 58 different families work with and provide some early intervention and therapeutic services for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. You're going to see that I/DD, and that's what that stands for. And these individuals also have a co-occurring behavioral health condition. And so we contract with local experts in the community to help those families work with their family members and ameliorate those symptoms and make sure that they're able to maintain in the community. The operations and subsidized living program within the CDDO is one that provides primarily for services for individuals as they become identified and come off the waiting list. This funding assures that those 4 different partners, Arrowhead West, Catch, Starkey, and ResCare, are able to maintain capacity so that they're able to serve people in a crisis. As soon as a crisis has been identified, that one of those 4 agencies will take folks, particularly if they're at risk of either hospitalization or harm to themselves or others. And so that's how that funding is used, is to make sure that there's community capacity for those crisis responses. Service access and outreach performs as the single point of entry into IDEDD services in the community, and anyone in the county who believes that they're eligible can apply for those services. The department staff determine eligibility, and then they make referrals and provide information to the community providers who actually deliver those services, and there are those 2,500 folks that are eligible for those services in the community. Quality assurance is a very important part of what the CDO does. They perform site visits, they do record reviews, they perform contract monitoring, and they make sure that those community providers that actually deliver the service are doing so in a safe and effective and efficient way. There are 44 different affiliate partners that deliver services in the community. State aid is a funding source that comes from the state, and it is used for services primarily for individuals who may be on the waiting list, maybe haven't been fully funded, but there are a variety of different services that can be funded with state aid, and the CDDO works mostly with community partners. There are a few services they deliver on their own, but most of those are delivered by contract providers. The CDDO system is one of the unique systems that the state contracts with, because there is funding for administration, and that's there's a budget. You'll see a budget for administration for the CDDO, and that's state funding that comes to help administer the programs. This past year, the CDDO worked with community providers in a matching fund program to help with some capacity development. As individuals come off of the waiting list, we want to make sure that there's community capacity to deliver those services to them, and this makes sure that the CDDO doesn't have to become a service provider, and so that's an important function there. The first 2 bullets talk primarily about funding reductions at the state level and what the CDDO has done to address those. The CDDO has restructured and made some changes in how they do business, and they've reduced some of the services that they've provided. And then the other significant change for the CDDO system was the implementation of CanCare for the IDEDD system in 2014. And in the past, there were 2 players, the CDDO and the service provider, and they worked with the family to make sure that services were appropriate. Now the MCO is a third party to that arrangement. The CDDO's budget request in terms of property tax funds is just over $2 million, and again, that's for challenging behaviors and then for that subsidized living program. And the non-tax fund budget request is $3.5 million, and that's state money that comes in and the CDDO manages on behalf of the state. The Aging Department, their mission includes assisting seniors, caregivers, individuals with disabilities, and low-income individuals achieve improved health and greater independence. One of their primary programs is community services, services that are delivered out in the community. They're to help individuals avoid hospitalization or nursing homes. And in 2014, over 25,000 services were provided, and they were provided by both department staff and by contracted community providers. There are 18 senior centers in the county that received funding in 2014, and they served over 9,000 individuals. And again, we've worked with, Annette has done a very nice job working with those senior centers to tighten up the programming and make sure that the programming that they're doing is meaningful and helps seniors stay out of higher levels of care. In-home services is a smaller program, but a very important one. It helped 158 seniors, again, avoid that nursing home placement primarily, and most of those services are provided by contracted staff and some by department staff. Aging case management has changed over the past few years. Now the bulk of the case management services that are delivered are through the Aging and Disability Resource Center, and that entity provides a call center, options counseling, and then eligibility assessments for a variety of different programs. The ADRC handled over 38,000 calls, did counseling with 2,200 folks, and did 6,500 Medicaid assessments. But this is the program that helps family members and seniors decide what's appropriate in terms of nursing homes or any type of non-residential services. There's also a Homemaker Personal Care and Information Assistance Program. 91,000 individuals were impacted by that particular program. There's a lot of information and assistance that gets mailed out to seniors throughout the community, and that was those services are provided both by staff and by contracts. The Physical Disabilities Program operates out of the Department on Aging. It served 578 individuals. It serves persons with disabilities of all ages, and all of those services are provided by contracted agencies. Transportation program is critical to the aging population. The department coordinates and provides transportation for seniors, individuals with disabilities, and for the general rural population. Over 26,000 rides were provided in 2014, and again, it's a mixture of staff and vans that they operate, and then contracted staff that are contracted service providers. The housing program in the Department of Aging is the former housing department. We've transitioned a couple of programs into various parts of human services over the last few years, and so these budget pages are actually in the community development section of the budget, but they have been transitioned into the Department on Aging, and that started in January of 15, I'm sorry. There's this program is the Section 8 program. There are about 214 vouchers in any given month, and the department staff determine eligibility, and then they issue payment to the landlords.
You say it's the HUD program. Isn't there another program besides HUD, Section 8?
The Section 8 program went to aging, and then a year prior we moved the Shelter Plus Care program from housing into the Director's Office in Human Services. And that's the one that we receive referrals from ComCare, Miracles, and Positive Directions. And so that there wasn't an appearance of favoritism, we didn't want to put it in ComCare at the time. We put it in the division.
Is that a program that used to be run by the city of Wichita?
Yes.
That's only is for inside municipalities?
No. We serve, the Shelter Plus Care program serves folks throughout the county, and it is targeted to individuals that either they meet one of three disability criteria: chronic mental illness,
I thought the one that we
HIV.
inherited from the city of Wichita was for municipalities only. Is there such a thing?
The city of Wichita manages their own Section 8 program, and we've got the Section 8 program that's outside the city of Wichita.
I understand what I'm talking about. Okay. This is the one they shifted over because they couldn't meet the requirements for how much they could spend on it.
That was the Shelter Plus Care program.
Is that right? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. The housing transition was one of the issues that was raised as we did the budget process. The continuing growth of seniors and their need for information and assistance and referral. And then there are changes in the transportation systems, both at the state level and local level, that Annette and her staff will be intimately involved in as those play out. The aging budget request for property tax funds, when you add in the housing funds, is $3.2 million. And their non-tax fund budget request is $7.8 million, again with that housing funding added in. The health department's mission is to improve the health of Sedgwick County residents by preventing disease, promoting wellness, and protecting the public from health threats. They have a general clinic that provides a number of clinic services. They screened over 3,000 individuals for STDs in 2014. The clinic also provides family planning services to over 3,000 individuals last year. And there's a maternal and child health program that targets particularly young mothers, and it served 869 individuals in 2014. The immunization program provides vaccinations and a number of other health screenings for individuals. And in 2014, there were 22,000 immunizations provided to about 13,000 residents, so multiple immunizations for some individuals. The Early Detection Works program is a targeted program for breast and cervical cancer testing for low-income individuals and women between the ages of 40 and 64, and there were 555 of those screens delivered last year. The general clinic and the rest of the health department relies upon a laboratory, and over almost 28,000 lab services were initiated last year. The WIC program is a state program that provides cash assistance and education for mothers, infants, and children. 24,000 individuals were enrolled in 2014. There's a customer support function within the health department that processed almost 1,000 medical records requests, 15,000 calls, or 15,000 client walkthroughs, and then 36,000 calls. The health department has a very extensive central supply. They inventory over 200,000 items for services that they deliver throughout the health department. The Healthy Babies program provides information and assistance to individuals, first-time mothers, and a number of different presentations throughout the community, and they served 1,600 folks in 2014. The Children's Dental Clinic provides a very needed service in the community, and it is for children that are not eligible for Medicaid health waiver or private insurance and who qualify for free and reduced lunches. 33 different dentists volunteered, and we delivered over 20,000 screenings in schools in 2014 and delivered 354 services to those children as well. The epidemiology function may be one that most are familiar with. It is the disease investigation and outbreak program, and they work with the entire healthcare system in the community, tracking information. And the thing that's probably most memorable in 2014 was the measles outbreak. And in addition to measles, there were a number of other investigations that were conducted. So a total of 1,550 services were provided in 2014. The TB program served 484 individuals, 10 of them with active TB, and so those individuals participate in what's called directly observed therapy. So we have staff that make sure that we watch them take that medication, and then there are 474 folks that are infected but not active, and so we help track them and provide medication for them as well. The STD control system tracks and monitors in coordination with private healthcare providers and KDHE STDs and tries to shut down the spread of those diseases through counseling, testing, and treatment. There were 3,500 individuals or investigations that were completed in 2014. The health planning unit gathers and analyzes public health data and shares that with the community to make sure that the entire community and the entire health care system is meeting the needs of the community. They also manage the Health Navigator program, which seeks to educate citizens and make sure that they know how to access community health clinics and resources. There were 2,400 services provided by the navigators. Health Promotions works with a number of different organizations. They served 37,000 people in 2014. The bulk of those were through health education presentations for employers in the community. The performance improvement section of the health department gathers data and monitors performance of the healthcare system in the community and helps make recommendations for services that can be scaled up, scaled back. And they're also keeping an eye on the workforce to make sure that there's adequate healthcare staff in the community to deliver those services. Animal control is relatively new to the health department. Tom mentioned that came over from Code, and those staff operate in the unincorporated parts of the county, and then they also coordinate efforts with the cities listed there. They responded to 1,800 calls and removed a number of different animals, and very successful in contacting bite victims and the animals that were related to those bites. Project Access is a program that coordinates donated care from hospitals and healthcare providers and medications and durable medical equipment. 1,481 individuals were served in 2014. Challenges and changes for the health department. There have been some reductions in staffing related to some grants that we've not accepted, so we've reduced staff in the chronic risk reduction area. We've eliminated some staff in the prevention area, and we have just recently completed the transition of the public health emergency preparedness folks into emergency management, emergency communications. So the property tax fund budget request for 2016 for the health department is just over $5 million, and the non-tax request is just under $7 million. Last but not least, crime prevention. A number of years ago, money was set aside to purchase programming to impact upstream youth at risk for offending, and so the division monitors these contracts. There were 1,400 individuals that were served, some of them by multiple programs. There were 10 different programs provided by 9 different agencies. The big change happened in 2014 when the Boys and Girls Club decided to discontinue their school service for kids that have been expelled for school for 186 days. Youth for Christ picked that program up and has done a very nice job with it as well. And so the property tax request for crime prevention is $762,000. The division summary totals $72 million, and again there are 2 decision packages, one related to the consolidated EMS billing and the other related to state hospital transportations. I would be glad to answer any questions or turn them over to the subject matter experts.
Commissioners, any questions for Tim and his group? Wow.
Wow. Thank you.
I guess Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm looking at the totals on pages 55 and 56. But where are those numbers for previous years? Can I compare what happened last year or the previous year somewhere in the budget book? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how's this changed compared to what we've had in the past.
I'm going to have to grab my budget book unless Lindsay's got those.
I will be
I'm sure it's there somewhere. It's kind of buried deep. I don't know where to find the differences.
And Commissioner, you're referring to the health department specifically, right?
Well, there's that. That's probably the biggest one, yeah. So that's, well, maybe not. Overall, the total division was over 70. I guess I'd like to know, comparatively speaking, how is this request? So you only had the 2 items that were package decisions, but everything else that's there. Can we have some type of a comparison from year to year? Where we're going to find that for the overall, the 5 areas we looked at today?
For
5
that,
different sections.
For the historical information, there's probably a couple of places I can point you to in your budget
Okay.
summary section at the front of the book.
Okay.
And I can tell you what page if you can give me a moment.
While Lindsay's looking that information up, I can tell you that in the previous years, that total was around $75 million. We've had some reductions in state funding. We have reduced some of the non-tax budgets for aging and for ComCare and for health, all three, to reflect some of those reductions in.
So the reductions from the state level, are those pass-through funds that were cut off at some point, where there's actually state decisions to reduce money from source from the state?
Some of them were tied to reductions in fee schedules, for example. So it was a combination of expenditures that were reduced over a number of years. But
Do you have a summary of those we can get?
yes, sir.
I'd like to see that if you don't mind. Thank you. And then back to the other question, I guess.
Well, and if you turn to pages 8 and 9, but in this case specifically page 9 behind budget summaries, it shows at least 2014 actuals with the 2015 and 2016 budget amounts. But if you're wanting the real details, then it would be within that human services section. And so, for example, the health department on page 521, we break out in some detail what the revenues and expenses are by category, and information is shown for 2013 actual, 2014 actual, the 2015 adopted and revised budgets, and then at least as the budget has been prepared thus far, the 2016 request. And so it'll walk through the expenditure categories and the revenue categories, and then the health, many of these departments within human services actually have sub-departments as well, and so Tim has broken those out. And so as you flip through the pages, you'll be able to see here's administration, here's health performance, those types of things, and so it gets even more detailed at that level.
I mean, it was a nice presentation, but trying to correlate that presentation with the budget book in front of me is hard to make a connection directly. So I guess I was trying to look at these pages while you were talking about those pages, and it's like, well, I just finally gave up on it. But it was a great presentation overall.
I'll be glad to provide you some year-over-year comparisons
That'd be
as
great.
well.
Just a lot of information there, so it'd just be nice to see what the changes are. And I guess I can go through the pages over here, but I don't have the background of what these things are. This was a good description. I can't connect that with this. It just doesn't line up very well. That's all. Thank you. That's all I got.
Commissioner Peter Jones?
Yes, I'm looking at page 425 with Human Services, all funds. You have the figure $70,791,750 for 2016 budget, all operating funds. And I just wanted to understand the variance between that and
That's going to be the health, the housing program. I included in our presentation the housing that is, those numbers will show up in the community development pages that Ron talked about. But because that transitioned in 2015, I've added them into my total. So that $72 million includes the housing.
Okay. I had another question. I wanted to go back, make sure I understood. Slide 14, Tim, where you were talking about adding one person for EMS patient building rep with a $59,393 request. Is that the net cost or just the cost of adding the person?
That's the full cost of the position and the salary and benefits.
Salary and benefits for the position, but we're anticipating that this position would generate savings that would offset some of that? Is
Yes, sir.
Correct?
That is
Do we have
correct.
any idea what the net
Well,
would look like?
I can tell you that when we looked at, if we project 2015, if you look at 2015 so far, what we've billed and what we're going to spend on salaries and what we would have paid in the old EMS contract, savings is around $350,000. And so if we add this position, and in part of that's in anticipation of increased billings in 2016, we're probably still going to be around $310,000 net positive.
Okay. So
The old contract that EMS had was with an external third party, and they billed 6% of all the submission, all the billing. And we are using a staff model instead. And so with the staff model, we underestimated, I think, just a little bit when we added those 5 positions. We probably could have used 6 from the very beginning.
okay. Well, I was just trying to have a understanding in terms of how that fits in on the decision side. I mean, if we think there may be a positive net cost, I mean, would be penny wise and pound foolish not to let that happen, but just to understand what our goal is at the front end. That's be helpful for me. Let me jump to page 28 in your presentation on aging and mission and services. One of the bullet items talks about how a mix of direct services by department staff and contracts with community providers. When you say contracts with community providers, these are third parties that the county contracts with, or could that be like a senior center?
Those particular services, the in-home services, we're talking about folks who are doing minor home repair. So it's carpenters, it's small construction firms. It's not going to be the senior centers in that particular instance. The senior centers are reflected in the slide before.
Well, I was trying to understand, since aging, mission, and services, what
those in-home,
if any of the in-home side of it, there was a connection. So it's like third parties that, and how do people who are receiving these benefits work this through on the county level? Is there someone that they, in the aging department, they interface with directly, or?
Yes, and I'm going to let Annette talk about that. Most of those calls are going to go through the ADRC to begin with, but I'll let Annette describe how they're dispatched for in-home services.
So for the in-home services, it's a variety of services. That includes our SKIP program, which is the Sedgwick County in-home program. That's for seniors. They come in through our front door. We go out and do an assessment, determine if they meet the eligibility criteria, and then they receive in-home services like homemaker and attendant care. And those we contract out with the service provider who provide those types of services. We also have the Senior Companion Program under that category, which is we contract with Minor Home Mental Health Association to do that. That's a volunteer program that they have volunteers that they coordinate with that are older. They get a stipend to go out and do the work and help seniors in their home that need some light services, some companionship and other kinds of services. Then there's the Envision program that's also in that category, and that's for seniors with low vision. Usually these are seniors that have lost their vision or became low vision as they age. So it's a program to help them really navigate within their home and within their community to manage and maintain their independence as they lose that vision and lose that sight. And then there's the Roving Pantry program. That is a senior services provided program where they work with seniors that need groceries and don't have the ability to either go out and do their grocery shopping independently, or they don't have family members or others who can go do that. This is a program where they qualify through senior services and they go out and do their grocery shopping once a week. The senior calls in the groceries, they go do the shopping for them and deliver them, and the senior pays for the groceries. So that's under that category of in-home. So it's a variety of different services. And depending on the program, it depends how they access that service. But any of the individuals that call in through the ADRC call center or information assistance who often don't know where those complex services are, we can direct them and make those referral and get them to those all of the programs that we fund. So that's kind of one of the great benefits of having that call center, is that we can coordinate and get people where they need to go because we have such a involvement and oversight for the network of service providers.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see no other questions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Commissioners, that was our final presentation for today. We do have time set aside for any discussion or questions if you have any, and if not, then I would recommend we adjourn and reconvene tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
I have a question. The Commission has expressed desire to look at do some line budgeting or priority-based budget, whatever, in a few departments. I think it'd be nice I think now's the time that we've had some presentations for staff to help facilitate this discussion. And may need to start with talking to commissioners and seeing what sorts of questions or issues. Each one of those departments is a little different, so it needs to be analyzed a little different, but you may want to have some discussions and try and facilitate that and see if what that might bring up. Okay? Anything else? I guess we're done.
Thank you.